Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, the show that offers you tips and strategies to help speakers build the business of their dreams. Now here's your host, 30-year industry veteran and business coach, Jane Atkinson.
Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Today we're talking about finding humor and happiness in speaking. And boy, I kind of feel like we need that right now. Michael Kerr is here with us. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, hello everyone. Hi, Jane. It's so fabulous to be here.
I'm so thrilled that you have agreed to be on the show.
I am honored.
We've known each other, I think, for over 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell everybody how you got into the speaking business in the first place.
Well, I was working in how do I put this politely, a soul-sucking, fun-sucking workplace that was sucking the life out of me. I've learned, Jane, by the way, when I use the phrase fun-sucking in my talks very often, I've learned the hard way. You have to be very careful when you say the word fun-sucking fast. So I worked in this fun-sucking workplace that was sucking the life out of me.
Yes.
And I decided I need to do something else with my life. I was a communications manager in an organization. So I did a lot of speaking and training with that job. I knew I was good at it. I loved doing it. It was my passion. And so I took the leap. I left. And I decided to make it my mission to talk about how work should not be sucking the life out of you. In fact, just the opposite. Wouldn't it be awesome if we actually feel energized at the end of our workday because we're working in such a great environment and such a great workplace culture, and we're having fun and we're enjoying the journey. And it's funny. I was always known for my humor as a manager. In fact, I got in trouble one year on my performance evaluation for my use of inappropriate humor, which my employees thought was just friggin' hilarious. They made me a little tiara and a sash with the title Mr. Inappropriate Use of Humor. So I was always thinking about how humor worked in terms of a workplace context, in terms of its impact on morale and creativity and communication and all that good stuff, managing our stress and being more resilient. And then I had this light bulb moment, the biggest light bulb moment, Jane, I would say, in my life. I took a sabbatical to think about what I was going to do with my future. I was thinking about this speaking thing. I didn't even know it was a thing, barely.
Yes.
Like you could make money doing this.
Really?
And I started researching humor from a more serious perspective. I went to a humor conference. I'm reading this book in the Banff Library on a ridiculously snowy May day. And I read this reference to somebody getting paid to talk about this idea of humor in the workplace. And it was the biggest ding, 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 ding light bulb I've had in my life. I remember leaning back in my chair and going, you can get paid for talking about this. Sign me up. So I took the leap, and that was, 25 years ago, I guess.
Okay, so 25 years ago. I want to spend some time on that year one, because did you say, I'm going to hang up my shingle and then ta-da, hundreds of clients floated in the door? Or tell me about year one, and was it a bit of a slog?
It was a slog, but I didn't know any better, right?
Right.
I took the leap. I remember being so excited. And then it was literally kind of like this. I would wake up one day and I would hear the theme from Rocky playing in my head. And I think, yes, this is the best decision I've made in my life. I can't wait. This is just going to be awesome. And then I would wake up the next day and go, oh my God, what have I done?
What have I done?
What have I done? No regular paycheck, no benefits, no pension, no nothing. And
did your wife have a kind of like a corporate job to give you the benefits and things like that?
She ran her own preschool right behind this door. She used to there. So she was the breadwinner after I took the leap. Now, I didn't just blindly take the leap. I had saved up a bunch of money. I had a good reserve.
Oh, see, now that's an important piece of information.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was 25 years ago. You leap into the industry, and you had decided, so you had picked a lane like moment one, which I don't think a lot of people get there.
I didn't
or did you
quite.
Try to do other things?
I didn't quite, because I think about you and your you're the lane woman, Jane. You know this, right?
Okay.
I didn't quite pick a lane. In fact, you would find this hilarious, and this was a big learning for me. When I left, I had worked as a senior communications manager in Banff National Park. So I thought to myself, well, I could piece together a bunch of different things that I speak on. And one of them is I could do these very funny welcome talks for conferences meeting in the Canadian Rockies and talk about the mountains and wildlife. But then I also had done a lot of public speaking training in my job. So I thought, well, I could do that. And then I started researching this humor stuff. So I thought I could do that. And then I was kind of interested in creativity at work. So those are the four things I kind of, and it was just a throw the spaghetti at the wall kind of approach. I literally had 2 different business cards and 2 different sets of that's how stupid I was. I just didn't know any better, right? 2 different sets of marketing packages, because I thought, well, if they're hiring me for the Rocky Mountain stuff, they don't care about this other stuff.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But what happened was very, very quickly, the marketplace told me, yeah, forget about those other 3. It is humor that people want.
Well, I think that it's so great that you landed there, and I'm glad to know that there was a bit of a backstory back and forth. What's really the indicator for people is if you have to do any kind of separate marketing for a topic, Houston, we have a problem.
Houston, we have a big problem. Yes.
If you can't blend it all together on one website, if you're writing your website homepage copy and you're really, really confused about what to put on the page, then you need to further go back to the drawing board and pick a lane. Totally. And so that you can talk about one problem that you're going to help solve. So the problem you help solve, Michael, is that a workplace can be a soul-sucking place.
Yeah. And yeah, so I talk about, in terms of the humor stuff, and it's always been the core of my brand.
Yes.
It's not just what I speak on and what I weave into any topic I speak on. It's how I deliver my message. So from early on, I've had the tagline, why choose between humor and content when you can have both? Because I've tried to get across the idea that it's not about choosing one or the other. And I say this to speakers all the time. Humor is just how you deliver your message. So if you can figure out a way, no matter how serious or dry you think your topic is, or boring, if you can figure out a way of bringing that to life and delivering those messages with humor, you're going to go to the top of the pack in your topic area. And yes, so primarily from the humor, the focus was how humor and a chicken and egg relationship I talked about, because how humor not just creates a more positive, inspiring, collaborative workplace culture, but it's the end result of a positive, inspiring, collaborative workplace culture, where it becomes easy to bring your sense of humor to work every day if you're working in a place where you're valued and respected and feel trusted and all that good stuff.
Why do you have to leave your shiny personality at the door when you enter the workplace, right? So let's bring our full selves to work. And we know there are people out there that really need this message. So you live in Canmore, Alberta, still, correct?
Yes.
My brother lived there for many, many years, and you have been to my brother's funeral. And I can't even tell you, seeing a friendly face in that crowd was like, whoa. It blew me away that you went. Thank you so much.
Of course. I was so happy to support you. And I knew Cliff just lived 3 houses down the road from me here.
So we have this soft spot for each other as a result of that. Talk about like when you first started working, did you work regionally and then nationally? And now are you doing a lot in the States? Talk a little bit about the Canadian versus US keynotes that you're doing.
Yeah, it's the bulk of my work has always been in Canada. I've always spoken in the States. I've spoken all over the world. Lots of different countries, Europe and Australia and South Africa and lots of different countries. So it has expanded over the years. But primarily it started off, it was actually, my very first paid professional talk was in Phoenix. So that was the first one. But it was,
there you go.
It wasn't strategic on my. Nothing was too strategic the first year. Let me tell you that.
You were, well, I really like though that you said that you saved a lot of money first
Yeah.
because starting a business takes cash flow. You need to invest and you need to have some cash flow to be able to do that without thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to get booked
Right.
because then I need to build a website.
Right.
That's not really the right order of things. It's hard to get booked without a website. And so that's why we have a ready, aim, launch process. And what
Yes.
we're talking about right now is an
Yeah.
aim. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you kind of mine. Okay, so now we're kind of transitioning over to your speech. How do you mine your life and the world for ideas that you use on the platform? Are you trying to rip stories from the headlines when you go up and speak? Are you always looking for things? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Jane, constantly. And I love the word mine because that's exactly what I do. I mine for
Yes.
humor everywhere and anywhere, and especially in unexpected places. So it could be everything from watching an episode of Frasier where Frasier says this beautifully pithy, funny quote where I go, oh, yes. And so I get out. Well, back in the day, it was getting out a notepad, literally,
Yes.
and writing
Yeah,
it
yeah.
down and going, oh, I'm going to use that quote. That is brilliant. Most people, even if they don't, it's a great quote. Most people will know Dr. Fraser Crane, and I can quote that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
but but literally, I would when you say mining the headlines, I literally back in the early days, I had folders where if I'm reading the newspaper, I would clip out these
Yeah.
little funny articles, these weird. And what I'm always looking for, and I always suggest speakers do this within your topic area. Just start a separate humor file and a
Mm.
separate humor file for all the subtopics you speak on, all the different messages you speak on,
Okay.
because it really will help your brain kind of zero in and find those things. And then
Yes.
just look for it everywhere in books, when you're traveling, your own stories, mine your own stories. There are times when I've captured stories, kind of just the headline of the story, right? So I remember the story,
Yeah.
but I haven't been able to use it for quite a while. But then eventually I'll figure out, oh, this is perfect to go back to this story and weave in a message. So one of the stories I very often tell, especially when I'm talking about humor and stress management, is how when I was on my honeymoon with my wife Claudine, she fell in Italy at the beach and broke her arm in 5 different places.
Oh
Now,
my God.
yeah, nothing
Sounds
funny about.
hilarious.
Yeah, so nothing funny in the moment about that, but there
No.
was a series of things that happened that were hilarious. And so
Yes.
I use that story to talk about reframing bad things that happen, the power of reframing. I talk about interpersonal skills because we had this crazy doctor who was just hilarious, but also a little a little lacking on the interpersonal skills, let's just say.
Oh no.
So just mining those stories, looking for things, and as I say to people, if you look for just those weird statistics, say, or those weird studies,
Yeah.
anybody will get a laugh out of quoting those. Now you might get a bigger laugh if you think about your delivery, of course, and how you physicalize it, and
Yeah.
maybe a follow-up line. But one classic example of one of the things I clipped out of a paper a gazillion years ago, and it was
Yeah.
just one of those small, tiny little stories. It was an Ipsos Reid survey about the level of photocopy machine rage in workplaces. And
Okay.
Alberta just happened to be Canada's leading capital of
Oh my
photocopy
God.
machine rage. So
Oh, I did not know that about
there you go.
Alberta.
Yeah.
Good thing I got out of there.
I know 51% of Albertans have admitted to physically assaulting a photocopier. So there's a line that I used to deliver all the time, and it
Yes.
got a huge laugh,
Yes.
right? So just, yeah,
Yeah.
constantly
Good
being on the
looking.
lookout for those things.
I love that. Talk about when putting together, let's say a 45-minute presentation. How many minutes should go by, or maybe I'm saying that backwards. How many minutes are too long for it to go by without any humor? Like in it, let's just not talk about you because you
Sure.
really are someone, you're a unicorn and very unique, and people are going to expect it to be funny and funny and funny and funny. Not like a comedian, but like
Right.
pretty consistent humor, right? So Michael Kerr
Yes.
has one way of doing it. Talk about the average speaker. who's talking about some boring leadership topic, how often should they be looking back at their speech to say, "Oh, I go 12 minutes there without saying anything remotely chuckle worthy."
Chuckle worthy. CW chuckle worthy. Yeah. Okay. So 12 minutes, I
See,
would say, is
you
way
find the
too long.
humor. You find the humor in everything. You just went chuckle worthy CW. That's fine. Like you do. You're mining constantly.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many minutes is way too long?
Oh God, that's a fascinating question. I love
Ooh,
this question. I think if you've gone 5 minutes without a laugh,
5.
that's too
Yeah.
long. That's too
Okay.
long. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to. And as you say, I mean, it depends on the context. It depends even on the placement of where you're speaking in the program,
Yes.
on all sorts of different factors. But
Okay.
but I would suggest, if you can, and I don't care how serious the topic is, there's always humor to be found if you look
Yeah.
for it. I would try for no more than 3 or 4 minutes without a
Okay.
laugh line in there.
So, and let's do a little caveat here. Let's say you're talking to an audience about grief or something that's very,
Right.
very heavy. I think there is a way to figure out a couple of moments to lighten the load for people. Um, do you have any notes on that, on how to do it in a way that has compassion and empathy?
Yeah. So my thinking is always, the more serious and the sadder the topic in this case, the more
Yes.
you need humor, and the more you can
Yes.
benefit from injecting some humor into it, and the more
Okay.
your audience needs some humor. They need to have a
Yes.
break, and as long as you're not
Yes.
disrespecting the topic or disrespecting the audience. So I think
Yeah.
that there are all sorts of ways. There are ways to find some self-effacing humor where you laugh at yourself, where
Yeah.
maybe you tell a story where you did something that was kind of a bonehead thing when you
Yeah.
were trying to console someone
Hmm.
who was grieving, and you said the most inappropriate, stupid thing, because we can all relate, right? We've all had
Yes,
those
for
cringy kind of
sure we
moments, and
can.
and you need that in those heavy
Yeah.
topics. You need that release. You need that. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes,
Even
release
if,
that.
okay, so let's say you open with a really heavy story and then you stop and you go, whew, that was heavy, wasn't it? Huh? Let's just shake it up a little for a second here because that was really hard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
if you acknowledge the elephant in the room that
Yeah.
it's a heavy topic, but we do need to laugh, and I think there's lots of good ways to go about that. Okay, so uh, you're now 25 years into this.
Yes.
You get hired for a talk next week and you're starting to prep. Talk a little bit about your preparation. Are you calling some people in the company and talking to them about what's going on? Are you asking them specific questions? How do you do your research on the front end?
It depends is the
Okay.
first answer. So sometimes I will call people. Sometimes I won't, because I
Okay.
I know the group well. I know the industry. I know what the concerns
Okay.
are. And I mean, of course, there will have been an in-depth discovery call where I'm asking questions. In terms of the humor side of things, I will ask questions like, and I always know, like, this isn't really going to affect my delivery, because I've been doing
Mhm.
this a lot. It's actually more than 25 years. I'm doing the math now. It's more like 28 years, I guess. Uh,
Wow.
so I've been doing this a long time. So I kind
Yeah.
of I know what audiences need, and at different times. But I will ask them just for a gut check,
Yeah.
especially if it's a committee and we're on a call, and they're all of a sudden they're talking about all this serious stuff and messages they want to get across. And sometimes when they get really heavy and serious, I'll start to think, did why are they
Are,
hiring me again?
are
Do they
you
know my
sure it's me?
yes. So I will ask the question, and just as a gut check kind of question. So if you could just kind of break it out, and I explain it just like this, you can't really break it out like this, but if you could assign a percentage in my talk for what you would like to see in terms of just laughs, like just make us laugh and feel good, versus
Yeah.
actual content, relevant information, how would
Yeah.
that percentage shake out? And so
Yes.
they'll
Yes.
they'll always they'll lean back in their chairs and go, and then they'll usually come up with a pretty, oh yeah, no, we want a lot of laughter. We
A
want people
lot.
laugh a lot.
Yes.
So maybe it'll be, 60-40 or 70-30 or somewhere in there.
Well, you're
Uh,
kind of reminding them why they hired you.
totally. Yeah.
And then you're making them drill it down to a number, which then gives you like, okay, yeah,
Okay.
I am in the
Yes.
right place. If they said to you 25%, would you say, okay, I don't think you've hired the right guy here? I'm going to give you your
Honestly, I
money
think I've
back.
I've never had that, but I think honestly, I would just kind of nod and I would go and
Yeah.
do what I know I need to do for the audience.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay.
would just
Okay.
blatantly ignore that very bad advice.
Okay. That's so funny. Okay. So let's talk about tried and true funnies. You have a bazillion of them now. You've heard the term murder your darlings. It's a
Yes.
writing, it's a writing term,
Yes.
and it's that you have to go back through your manuscript and even the parts that you just hang on to so tightly because they're so beautifully written. They're
Yeah.
your darlings. You need to murder them because we're editing and editing and editing. So
Right.
you probably have to murder your darlings all the time.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. You have little funerals.
Yeah.
Um, so so how much of, so let's say back to the one that you're doing next week, how much of that opening story, because we know that the opening has got to kill, right?
Right.
How much of the opening story is tried and true, and how much is going to be ripped from the headlines or what have you?
I love this question. I would suggest most of the time it's tried and true. As you say, you want to nail the opening.
Yes.
You want to just with the first line get that. I want to get that laugh right away. I want to
Yeah.
demonstrate the energy. I want to open with something that's just a kabang. And a quick side story on this. In fact,
Okay.
I mentioned earlier speaking in Phoenix, one of my early talks, and I had some talks after that, and I remember thinking after one of my talks, I phoned home, and this is how long ago it was. I phoned home via a payphone.
What? What is that?
Yes, to talk to my wife, and she asked how it went, and I said, it was okay. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, okay just isn't going to cut it in this business. I can't just be
Hmm.
okay. So I made the choice right then and there. I had a talk coming up in Winnipeg. It was for a human resources conference. It was a pretty big group. It was 400 or 500 people. I thought, you know
Okay.
what? I am going to just go crazy. Because I realized I had pulled back from my personality a little bit. I got
Oh,
sucked into that trap of being a professional speaker,
you're
business
finding
speaker.
your authentic self
Yeah, yeah.
because you
So
were,
yes, it was
yeah,
funny, but it wasn't that like I
yeah.
wasn't being myself. So I thought, you know what? Forget. I'm just gonna go crazy. I'm gonna move the needle like way over here. I can't. I'm trying
Into,
to show it in the camera here. I'm gonna.
we're
I'm gonna.
we are on YouTube, by the
Yeah.
way, for this podcast, but they can't see your needle if they're listening on Apple
um.
Podcast.
I'm just gonna move the needle way over here. I'm gonna be outrageous. And that's when I first came up with this opening where it was just kind of grabbing the audience, where I came out and I showed these two different personalities going to work on a Monday morning. The happy guy
Oh,
where you leap out of bed and you do the fun, and that's the first time I did my fun dance. And I talk
yes.
about grabbing your rubber chicken and running through the streets of your town and all this craziness. And then the stressed out guy where I messed up my hair for the first time, like big like this, and I had an IV drip, and I talked about voting yourself off the island, and it was just crazy. And my whole talk, I had a gazillion props, and I took my pants off at one point with a purpose. Don't take your pants off if you have no reason to do it. I had a reason
Okay.
to do it. So I just went crazy. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, either I'm going to embarrass the hell out of me, but here's
Yes.
the deal. I'm speaking in Winnipeg. I don't know anybody in Winnipeg. I don't know anyone in the audience. I'll just never go back to Winnipeg again in my life.
I'll be
I'll just,
banished.
hide from Winnipeg. But I did this. I got my first standing ovation, a
Oh, wow.
ridiculous rave review testimonial. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, this is how
Okay,
it has
so
to.
you open with this massive amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep it going? Like, do you have little bursts of energy then later where you do your happy dance and things like that? And by the way, I just want to tell people visually, think like not Martin Short, but that's kind of who comes to mind when I think about you doing your happy dance.
Yeah, a lot
It's
of people say that, Jane. Martin Short or
yeah,
Pee Wee Herman or
yeah, like just a lot of energy and a lot of
yeah.
physicality, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. So, and I'll share maybe where people can see some video of you. Um,
But Jane, yeah. I'm known as a very high energy speaker. So
yes.
I try to sustain this high energy throughout. Yes, there are times when
Okay.
it gets a little quieter. I'm telling a story where
Yeah.
I'm going to slow down and it's going to be a little more thoughtful. But I want to circle back to your question
Okay.
though, because this is an important one. I also, at the same time, I do very much mind things that happen if there and this is what I always tell speakers is think about the thought bubble in your audience. So
Yeah.
if there is something major that has happened in the world or in their town the day before and they're all talking about that's all they're talking about at the break at the breakfast
Yes.
buffet, start where the audience is. So I will
Okay.
look for those opportunities for sure in terms of ripping from the headline. In fact, this is a weird statistic that I've managed to keep since like 2000. I have
Okay.
always had a morning keynote the day after a US presidential election. So
Oh,
so a classic one where I got a huge laugh. I was speaking at the Chateau Lake Louise, but it was to an American audience and
okay.
they were all sitting in their state by states for whatever reason. They were all in their different
Uh,
states, and this
okay.
was for a little history reminder here. This was the contentious 2000 Al Gore George Bush Jr.
Oh,
election where there was no result yet. Right? They were
hanging
gridlocked.
chads. That was the hang.
The hanging chads, and it was
Ew.
all because of Florida. So all I had to say to get a huge laugh was I just came out, and that's all everyone's talking about, right? That's all they're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. So I just paused, took a beat, and then said, put up my hand and said, "Where are the Florida people?" And that's all I had to say. And it got a huge laugh. And it probably got a huge laugh just from the anticipation of, oh, what's he going to say next? Like he's going to.
Yes, yes.
So I always look for that.
And
But
you
I
don't even
also,
need to go there. You're just
yeah,
calling it out.
it
You
just
don't
kind
even
of,
need
yeah.
to say much more on that
No,
subject.
that's all I had to say. The other thing
Oh,
I do though, Jane, for sure, when it's a conference,
hmm.
when it's an event, is I will always go in and listen to the speakers before me. I will listen to the CEO before me, and that's when I'm always looking for
Mining.
something that I can slip into and then I very will slip it into my opening. Sometimes I'll be flooded with so many ideas. I'll go, oh crap, I've got like 6 gems here so I have to
Yes,
select, okay, which one's going to be the funniest.
yes.
And sometimes I'll be listening to a speaker for an hour, maybe it's the CEO even, and I'm just sitting, and finally, like at the 50-minute mark, it'll be the little light bulb where there it is. He just
There it
said this
is.
awesome
Thank
thing. So,
you for my piece of gold. Yes, I
yeah,
love that.
yeah. One of my do you want to know my biggest laugh I've ever gotten?
Please.
Yes. So this was mining a earlier event at a conference. It was and it's funny. I really took a risk here. I love the quote, by the way, when we're talking about humor. Lucille Ball. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's
Yeah.
something along the lines of, "I don't think I was particularly funny. I was just brave." And sometimes we just have to be
Yeah.
brave enough to be a little goofy
Yes.
and be a little
And to try
and to
something
try.
on that's a risk, like
Yes,
you
try.
and
Yes.
that whole pants thing. I'm not sure how that
Yeah.
happened, but anyway, uh,
So yes, this event, it's a very, small C conservative audience, rural agriculture folks, 300 people in
okay.
the audience. I'm listening in the morning. The opening speaker was Timothy Cofield, who wrote a book. He talks about debunking
Oh yeah.
pseudoscience and anti-science myths, and he wrote a book, and the book had just come out, I think, at the time, called "Is Gwyneth Paltrow Wrong About Everything?" And he's talking, and I'm in the back of the room, and he's talking about some pretty, like some pretty outrageous stuff. And I'm looking at this audience going, oh my God, like
Like
he's
the
saying this.
candles and things like that. Is that what
Oh
you're
yeah,
talking about?
like things, yeah, I don't even want to say it here, but like, and he's
Yeah.
saying this in front of me, and I'm going, oh,
Okay.
but they're sucking this up. They love it. They're like
Yeah.
sponges. So I took the risk when I opened. I came out on stage, took a little beat, looked around the room, and I said, and this is all based on 3 things he had said about Gwyneth Paltrow's advice. So I said, well, folks, I'm ready for you. I have rubbed, and I forget the exact language now. I have rubbed rubbed the essence of Wolverine on my nipples. I have some other thing, and then this was the line. This was the the rule of threes. The third line was, and I have frozen my testicles. And I thought, this is the first time I've ever said the word testicles in a talk. Let's just see how it goes over. It was the biggest, longest laugh I've ever had. They were crying, laughing. It went on and on and on. I had to sit there to not step on the laughter. Then, and I always like looking for the follow-up line to catch another wave.
Did you have it in your back pocket already?
No, it just came to me in the moment. It just came because I didn't know what the response was either. I didn't know it would be that good a response. Like they were just crying, laughing. And when the laughter finally subsided, I looked around and I said, now I'm just trying to imagine that there might be a few people in the audience who weren't at Timothy's talk this morning. And then that got a huge, and all I had to say was that, right? And that just got another huge wave of laughter.
That is so funny. Okay. I love it. Well, I'm thinking people are getting inspired that they want to bring more humor. Michael, do you do coaching for speakers one-on-one? Do you ever do that work?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a couple of other things. I'm just looking at our time here. What has made you the most happy about your speaking business in general?
What has made me most, well, this sounds so eye-rolling cliche, but I really do love it. Like there's nothing better when you hit it out of the ballpark in this job, and when it's not about you. Like I always think I'm in the service of the ideas I speak about. So I love it when I get follow-up notes, when I get cards in the mail, when I get anything like that, where people say, wow, the impact your presentation had on our workplace, on our team, the stuff we're still doing because of your talk. Like that's why we do this, right? That's everything to me. So that just feeds me. That just fuels my soul.
Can you believe that we get paid for this?
I know.
I know. Like it's insane.
It is. It is. So certainly that is, there's nothing more, I think, inspiring and meaningful than that. Just knowing that you got people excited about the ideas. Like one of my goals, I think, is to try to show how passionate I am about these ideas. And I want that passion to be contagious. I want it to be infectious so that they get excited, not about me, but about the ideas. So they go, oh my God. So I show them what's possible. So I explain these examples from one of the things I do, Jane, in terms of finding not just humor, but content in terms of my culture stuff, is for years, I've gone into businesses and interviewed CEOs and leaders and all over the world, in Finland and Norway and Denmark and South Africa and Australia and everywhere, and gotten these really good little nuggets and some great examples of humor in the workplace that I share with my audiences. And I purposely look for under the radar kind of companies that not everyone else is talking about. So that kind of helps make them more my stories, because no one else has gone into these companies. No one else has found these stories, right? So I'm sharing these stories that aren't commonplace, that all the other speakers aren't sharing. But that just really, really jazzes me. And that keeps me inspired too. When I keep finding these cool, interesting, fun ideas, like that just keeps me so motivated and passionate. And then another big aspect about this job too, that I want to remind people of, that I just love about this job, is I'm a big foodie. I'm a big food guy and a travel guy. So early on, I made the decision that when I travel to speak, I'm going to combine some personal life with it. I'm not going to just always be in and out overnight. And I've made the conscious decision and talked about this, that I would rather have less money at the end of the year, but have lived a better, happier, stress-free lifestyle and have seen the world. And enjoyed myself on these trips, because we have this luxury of, we get invited to these incredible places to speak sometimes. And so I'm like it's crazy, some of the things I've done in terms of combining my personal life with travel. Like, oh, I gotta talk. Why don't we just take an extra 4 weeks off?
Oh,
Uh,
beautiful. Well, it
but
is all about lifestyle. If you're not creating the lifestyle of your dreams, then what are we doing here, right?
totally,
So I
totally.
think that that is beautiful. And maybe you didn't get there immediately, but I love that you and Claudine have been able to travel the world as
Yeah.
a result of it. Okay, so to drive that, final question.
Yes.
Has spinoff been your number one form of marketing? And if so, what would you say was number two?
For sure. Spin-off, word of mouth, absolutely number one, especially in the last year. And that is driven, I think, by more than anything else. Well, a word we haven't talked about, and it's certainly applicable with humor too, is being intensely relevant to their needs,
Mm,
relevant to their business. When an audience sees you as being highly relevant, that's when and this happened to me several times in the last year. I think more so than ever in my career, actually, Jane. So I'm
really?
proud of this, where the client has come up right after I've literally walked off the stage and said, open up your calendar. What are you doing a year from this date? Because we do this and we want you back for the same thing. And I had that so many times in the last year, but it's being relevant. And that speaks to the humor too. Your humor has to be relevant. That's why asking your clients for insider tips about their humor. Are there
Yes.
words? Are there acronyms they
Yeah.
laugh at? Do they have funny characters in the audience you could play off of?
Yeah.
Finding the
Were there
humor
any
that's
photocopier meltdowns
yeah,
this week?
exactly,
No.
exactly. And one of the things I do uh, that has worked really well for me is I have this huge, massive catalog of ideas, but
Mm.
they're all divided by subject type and or industry type or even location type, so that if say I have a talk with the National Veterinarian Association, I can go to
Yes.
my little database and there's a whole list of funny stories, funny examples from
Oh,
businesses, funny statistics, all related to veterinarians. And
that
so it's
sounds
right there.
amazing. So you're tagging everything appropriately when you
Yeah.
put it into your database. What are you using for that? What's the software? What's the platform that you're doing that in? Is it just an Excel spreadsheet or what are you doing?
I
It's
love
going to
that
be,
you I love that
is
you asked
it
that because
Post-it notes in a folder?
yeah,
Tell me
yeah, I've
what
got a
you're
whole
doing.
wall over here. It's people laugh when I say this because they always, whoa, how are you storing all this great stuff? Or,
Yeah.
well, just wait for it. Just wait for it. Lean in, everyone. I do it on a Microsoft Word document,
A word. Okay, good. But
but
you
I
can
just
put
I have created it in such a way that I know where everything I can find stuff really easy. It's all
that's really good.
searchable. It's using keywords. It's using keywords that I know I'm going to look for that ties into these different stories, different ideas, different
I love it.
audience types.
Okay, so let's say somebody wanted to get some humor coaching from you. What should they do first? Where do they connect with you?
Well, they can cruise by my website, www.mikekerr.com. Do we have to say the triple W? Why did I say
I
that?
don't
That's
think
on my
so.
am I new here? Mikekerr.com.
HTTPS colon backslash
Forward slash backslash yeah and my email address is mike@mikekerr.com, so
Okay,
they're
okay,
welcome
that's
to find me there.
Kerr, everybody.
Kerr,
And
Mikekerr.
R.
Doesn't quite work.
I really appreciate you coming on the show today. You have totally lightened, there's a lot going on politically in the world right now,
Yeah.
and it's feeling heavier and heavier by the moment. And you have just, I feel renewed. So I'm sure your audiences feel this way. It's refreshing, it's effervescent. Thank you so much, Michael, for being with us today. Um,
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
I
What?
I want to hear from our audience if they've appreciated it. Write me a note, Jane@speakerlauncher.com.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And one little thing to leave everyone with on that
Okay.
note, Jane, because the world is so heavy.
Yeah.
One thing I advise, and this is actually what we did at the start of the lockdown in the pandemic.
Okay.
My wife Claudine turned to me and she said, "Okay, here's the deal. We are not ending the day with news. We're not ending the day with a serial killer drama because there's enough stress in the world.
Right.
We are going to up our comedy watching." And that's all we watched was comedies. And it may sound trite, but wow, did it make a difference doing that.
You know what's actually, my husband and I, especially when we're at the cottage, because we're stream only up there, last man standing, Tim Allen, I don't always love his politics, but I always liked that he showed both sides of the equation. So
Right.
he would show his side, which kind of was clearly his side, but then he would also show the opposing in through his comedy. And
Yeah.
so when we watch a heavy show, we finish on Last Man Standing. We stream it on Disney Plus, actually. So there you go. That's our little tip, is to watch a little humor at the end of the day. I think that's good. So good. Michael
And start
Kerr.
a humor file of accidentally funny things. This is one of my favorite things to do. It helps you grow your sense of humor. The things that aren't supposed to be funny, Jane, but they're funny when you give it that second.
I love it when they misname a vegetable or something like that. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you again. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you, Jane. It's been an honor. Keep laughing, everyone.
We'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. If you need help building the speaking business of your dreams, head over to wealthyspeakerschool.com and take advantage of our 20-minute next step call. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast.